Hey everyone, welcome back to RJK English. I did the introduction to creation last time. This will have a whole playlist. We're going to start on the first chapter today. Please watch that first. So things that we can look at in this book. I bought a used copy, and someone gave some background of the people that we're talking about. We'll use this as we go through it. We'll also use this map to see where Athens is compared to Persia. Here's Egypt down here, Greece and Egypt and Persia, and then all the way across India. Here's India into China. All right, we're going to start with book one. Herodotus gives a reading at the Odeon in Athens. Herodotus is, again, credited as the first historian. He gave a history from the point of view of Greece, the Athenian Greek Empire, um, which was, and he gave it from the point of view of Greece. He did. He talked about the wars against Persia. We're going to see an inversion of this. So that is the Western mindset. If you grow up in the US, if you grow up in Europe, Australia, everything starts with Greece, and Greece is us, which is weird because Greece is obviously European, but has a lot more in common with Egypt, the ancient Roman Empire too, Syria, what is now, the area that Turkey now is, is at. That Greece has much more of a relation to them, but for Westerners, we say that they're Western. And so this kind of blows up that idea. And why? Because we're going to look at a time, my favorite, most interesting time of history, which is the Axial Age, when there was a switch in how the religions and philosophies of the world saw the world, going from a hierarchical temple system to a personal system. Now, Persia will represent the old system here, because they were Zoroastrians. And Zoroastrians were the first monotheists. They were very much related to the first Indian Aryans. They have the same language group. They're from the same language family as Europe. The Indo-European languages, obviously, they're from the Persian and Indo side of that. But the ancient Vedic scriptures, like the Rig Veda, the language is close to the original Zoroastrian language of the Avesta. So the Avestan language is similar, and even their gods are similar. Whereas Zoroastrianism sees the gods that India and the Rig Veda are, extolling. It sees them as demons, but it's the same world that they're inhabiting. They kept that temple system idea, and that system's going to die. And Gore Vidal ingeniously combines Persia itself with that system and the fact that Persia itself kind of fell at this time. The Achaemenid Empire, I don't know exactly how you say that. Um, they fell, especially to Alexander the Great. So, anyways, book one, Herodotus gives a reading at the Odeon in Athens. First word that we don't know. What's the Odeon? Let's look. Odeon, Athens. So this is the Odeon. This building still stands today. It's a place where people could go and listen together. And at this time, Greeks loved philosophy. They also loved orgies. They loved a lot of things, but they really loved philosophy, and they would sit in and listen to philosophy. Now, little caveat, Greece was built on a slave system, So we're talking about the land-owning rich people that would have been considered citizens in Athens were able to be part of this democracy. It's the first democracy. And all of this philosophy, and really groundbreaking philosophy. The Greeks were incredible. They knew the circumference of the earth at that time. We're talking what, 500 BC, 300 BC? They knew the circumference of the earth. They figured out that probably the world was made up of atoms. Like, are you kidding me? Now, we could point out that some of that came from India. We'll talk about it in this book, or that it came from elsewhere. But anyways, this is the Odeon, and here we start, 446 BCE. Okay, I'm going to blow this up. One moment. I am blind, but I'm not deaf. Because of the incompleteness of my misfortune, I was obliged yesterday to listen for nearly 6 hours to a self-styled historian whose account of what the Athenians like to call the Persian Wars was nonsense of a sort that were I less old and more privileged, I would have risen in my seat at the Odeon and scandalized all Athens by answering him. Okay, pretty intimidating first paragraph. But let's look at what we know. And this is a good way to start a book. You want a good first line. I am blind. Okay, it's just matter of fact, I'm blind. So we get one, we know that this is being dictated from one person's point of view. This is a first person narrative. Okay, someone is narrating this book. I am blind. And we know that he's blind. But I am not deaf. Okay, why would we care that he's not deaf? Because we just learned that Herodotus is giving a reading at the Odeon in Athens. So we know that he probably is not happy with this reading, right? Because of the incompleteness of my misfortune. So this is a strange way of talking. So often it's a funny way of talking. So instead of saying, I'm very unfortunate to have to listen to this person, he says, because of the incompleteness of my misfortune, meaning I wasn't killed, I should be dead so I don't have to listen to this, or something like that. Because of the incompleteness of my misfortune, I was obliged. Obliged means obligation. I had to, or I very much needed to be part of this, even though maybe I didn't want to. I was obliged yesterday to listen for nearly 6 hours to a self-styled historian. What does self-styled mean? It means you call yourself that. Other people don't call you it, you call yourself it. It's what you say about someone that you don't think is very good at what they do. He's a self-styled philosopher. You could say about me, he's a self-styled teacher, He's a self-styled teacher of English, I had to listen to a self-styled historian whose account of what the Athenians like to call the Persian Wars. So he doesn't say his account of the Persian Wars. He says his account of that thing that Athenians like to call the Persian Wars. Okay, so he's indicating that he doesn't believe what this person wrote. In fact, he's against it. Whose account of what the Athenians like to call the Persian Wars was nonsense of a sort that were I less old and more privileged, I would have risen in my seat at the Odeon and scandalized all Athens by answering him. So, where are we at? This is one sentence. It's a huge sentence. Because I wasn't killed and I had to be here, I had to listen for 6 hours to a guy who calls himself a historian, whose account of the Persian Wars, what the Persian Wars, in quotes, This account was nonsense. How much of a nonsense, or what type of nonsense? It was a nonsense of a sort that, and now we're going to stop, of a sort that, break. If I was less old, if I was younger and richer and more powerful. So again, he's obliged to listen. Why? Because he's not that powerful, because he's blind, and because he's old. If he wasn't those things, he would have risen in his seat at the Odeon, which they could do, and scandalized all of Athens. What does it mean to scandalize? It means to create scandal, to create hubbub, to say something controversial that everyone is, oh my God, blah, 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 and they write newspapers about it, or newspaper articles about it. He would have risen in his seat and scandalized Athens by answering. What is unsaid here? His answer to what Herodotus said would have contradicted what Herodotus said. And it would have said that what Herodotus wrote and read was complete BS. Okay, it's BS. That's what he's saying. He says it in a long way. And it's more of an artistic rendering. So what do we get from this? We understand that this person is intelligent, that they, not the writer, but the person, because this is someone narrating, right? That they don't agree with a lot of Athens. This is what Athens believes. I don't believe it. And they feel like a victim. Maybe they were accustomed to being powerful and now they're not, right? They're even blind. And they have to listen to this BS. BS means bullshit. But then I know the origin of the Greek wars. Oh, this is what he would have said. I know the origin, how the Greek wars started. And he calls them the Greek wars, not the Persian wars, right? But then I know the origin of the Greek wars. He does not. How could he? How could any Greek? So now we think this person's probably not Greek. I spent most of my life at the court of Persia. And even now, in my 75th year, I still serve the great king. Okay, so now we're seeing who this person is. He's in Greece, but he doesn't serve Greece. He serves Persia. What could he be? Maybe he's a captured person. Maybe he's an ambassador. I still serve, maybe he's a warrior. Maybe I still serve the great king as I did his father, my beloved friend Xerxes. And his father before him, a hero known even to the Greeks as Darius the Great. So what is his point of view? We kind of get the idea that he thinks Persia's the greatest, right? And he is a partisan. We would say a partisan, meaning he's on this side. So we also see a comparison here. He's saying the Greeks are partisan, that they just see their side. And then we see that he kind of sees his side, right? When the painful reading finally ended, the reading was painful to him. When it finally ended, our historian, and now he's going to describe the historian. When the painful reading finally ended, now we're cutting, okay? And he's going to just talk. Our historian has a thin, monotonous voice made even less charming by a harsh Dorian accent. Okay, so Dorian was a part of Greece. They had a different accent. So now back to it. When my painful reading finally ended, now let's skip down, my 18-year-old nephew, Democritus, wanted to know if I would like to stay behind and speak to the traducer of Persia. So Democritus is a Greek name, and I actually would think of it as a Latin name with the US ending. but democracy comes from Greece. So he's Persian, but his nephew has taken a Greek name, Democritus, and a name that actually is about democracy in Greece, which was not in Persia. So we get the idea that his nephew really, really bought into being Greek, right? Even though his uncle, the guy who's speaking, did not. What is a traducer? Well, if we let's look it up. Traducer. One who attacks the reputation of another by slander or libel. Backbiter, defamer, libeler, maligner, slanderer. Okay, so he's saying someone that slanders Persia, that says lies about Persia. He's the traducer of Persia. Okay, so we're going to stop here. This is the beginning of the book. I hope you're getting into it. We're going to go through it part by part. Let me know if you'd like me to read through it and then go back. I can kind of work with what you want, but I think I'm going to go through it little by little as we read through it. Okay, you're going to get to know this narrator, and we'll get going on this. All right, great seeing you again. Make sure to like and subscribe so I can keep making these videos. And go to us on RJK English on Facebook, and we can have further conversation as well. See you later.